Hello Cascade Pottery. In this video I'm going to teach you about glazing your work, transforming it from stage 5 bisqueware that has been fired in the kiln one time into stage 6 glazeware, which has been fired in the kiln 2 times. In our case, our bisqueware is white. We are using Wonder White from Georgie's, fired to cone 04. Adding glaze and firing in the kiln a second time in the glaze firing is what transforms our pottery into stage 6 glazeware. Glazeware is shiny, it is waterproof, and it is also food safe. All the glazeware produced in the Cascade studio is guaranteed to be food safe, microwave safe, and dishwasher safe. Stage 5 bisqueware will no longer dissolve in water. This is now permanent ceramic pottery. Although it will not dissolve in water, if I put my coffee in this cup, at first it would appear that it would hold my coffee, but it would slowly leak out the bottom. That is because our clay is porous, which means leaky, at stage 5. To make it vitreous, which means not leaky or watertight, we must do one last step to transform our pottery into stage 6 glazeware. Glaze sounds like glass because it is. When we are adding glaze to our work, we are actually adding a thin coat of clear glass to the surface. We add that glass by painting on a liquid. So this liquid glaze actually contains tiny particles of glass. This will not cut you, don't worry. Glaze will not stain your clothes. It is easy to clean up with water. To turn clear, this glaze must be fired in the kiln. So your pottery, after you paint the clear glaze on the surface, will fire it in the kiln a second time for the glaze firing, this time to cone 06. How do I know? Because it says it right here on the jar, fired to cone 06. It also says apply 2 to 3 coats. You must apply 2 to 3 coats of clear glaze in order to make your pottery vitreous, which means not leaky, and food safe. Whether you are choosing to add color when glazing your work or not, clear glaze is required. I will not glaze fire your piece unless it looks bright green, so I know it has been painted with 2 to 3 coats of clear glaze. You might ask, well, I don't plan to eat out of my pinch pot. It's a ring bowl. Why do I have to add the clear glaze? Because the special underglaze paints that we have are meant to be sealed in underneath the clear glaze. How do I know? Because it says it right there on the bottle. Apply clear brushing or dipping glaze. They do make glaze where you can dip your whole piece of bisqueware into it, but the glaze that we have at Cascade, you paint on with a paintbrush. 2 to 3 coats. It dries quickly. You should let it dry in between coats. You can use a hair dryer to make it dry even more quickly. We have a whole range of colors available at Cascade. We have 13 different colors of underglaze to choose from. We have red, orange, yellow, green, turquoise, blue, purple, pink. We have 3 different browns. That's a beige, a medium brown, and a dark brown. We also have black and white. You can also custom mix them to get just the color that you're hoping for. I caution you, if you want to mix a gray, like the Cascade student who created this elephant slab cup, do not mix equal amounts of black and white. When it's fired, that will come out looking black. So make sure that if you want to mix a light gray, use mostly white underglaze with just a couple drops of black stirred in. If you paint on a single coat of underglaze, it is somewhat transparent. You will see some of the white clay showing through, like watercolors. 1 coat is fine. But if you want a full, bold opacity that is vibrant and bright, you must do 3 coats. So paint it once, let it dry. Paint it a second time, let it dry. Paint it a third time. If you paint on 2 coats of underglaze, you will get a mottled or blotchy effect, like in this student piece. 2 coats can be really nice for when you're painting in an underwater scene or showing the sky. For the full opacity of the color, do 3 coats like I did in this ramen bowl. If you have texture or incisions on your work, you can expect that the underglaze will pool in the indentations in the clay, making the colors just a bit darker than on the surface. Here are samples of our 3 different browns: light, medium, and dark. You can also custom mix these if you want a brown that is in between these shades. As you can see on these examples, it is possible to splatter or drip our underglazes. I caution you that if you're dripping, do not let a thick puddle of underglaze pool up at the bottom, because if it gets too thick, it can cause your pottery to crack when firing. If you are painting on coats, don't worry about that. Only if you're dripping do you need to worry about having a thick puddle. Now let's check out the difference between what it looks like when you add clear glaze only to your bisqueware and what it looks like if you add white underglaze and clear glaze. So for a starting point, this is our unglazed bisqueware. This is what it looks like if we add clear glaze only. The color stays exactly the same, but it becomes shinier. If we add white underglaze and then the clear glaze on top, you can see that we do get just a slightly brighter, truer white than the off-white of our bisqueware. Artist's choice. The color of the underglaze does change when the work is fired in the kiln. This is the purple underglaze before firing and after firing. You can see that the color becomes more vibrant, brighter. It becomes less chalky and pastel. It also, of course, becomes shinier. When you are glazing your piece, the first step is to apply the underglaze. Like the name suggests, it is supposed to go on under the glaze, so add your colors first. Once your underglaze is dry, then right on top of it, paint on 2 to 3 coats of the clear glaze, letting it dry in between each coat. Once your piece is covered in 2 to 3 coats of clear glaze, it is ready to be glaze fired in the kiln. Don't get confused. This one is the underglaze in the color green. This one is the clear glaze. The one that looks a weird neon green is the clear. The one that looks more like a green you might see in nature is the one that is the underglaze. Keep them labeled if you have to tell them apart. During the glaze firing, the glass particles in the glaze melt and fuse to the surface, turning clear. The same way that the glaze fuses to the surface during the firing, if 2 pieces are touching in a glaze firing, they can get fused together, and then you must break the layer of glaze, the glass, that has created that bond. Do not glaze the bottom of your pottery. You will see that all of these pieces are unglazed, also with no underglaze on the bottom. This is to prevent them from being fused to the kiln shelf. You can glaze parts of the bottom, but you cannot glaze where it touches the table. I added a foot to this bowl, so only where it touches the table must be free of glaze and underglaze. If you accidentally glaze the bottom of your pottery, it is easy to remove glaze and clean up with water. Just get a wet cloth or sponge, add the water to the bottom. Give it a minute for the water to dissolve the glaze that is on there. You can put your wet cloth flat on the table and then wipe your pottery across there. It's fine if there's a bit of underglaze in any of the incisions on the bottom, as long as the surface that is touching the table and later the kiln shelf is free of underglaze and glaze. Glaze fusing can be used as a method for repairing broken attachments. Imagine if this unicorn horn had broken off, I could dip it in the clear glaze and then let it dry with a layer of clear glaze between the broken piece and the body of the cup. And when glaze fired, that would fuse the two pieces together. That technique does not work, however, on a piece where gravity is not on your side. For example, if I tried to glaze fuse the ear onto this elephant in the firing, gravity would cause it just to fall off while that liquid glaze is molten hot inside the kiln. Any gluing or super gluing of broken pieces must be done after the glaze firing. Super glue cannot go through the kiln. Glaze can also be helpful in sealing up pieces that might not otherwise be completely watertight. For example, on the bottom of my coil pot, I have a few cracks from when the clay was drying. I'm pretty confident that once that crack is filled with glaze, this piece will be watertight. What I'm doing here is wiping the glaze off of the surface to let the color stay in between the coils.